virtually halfway through the year now between the last COP and the one coming up this year. So what do you think? What are you expecting at this year's COP?
I think this year's COP is critical, but the one thing before we maybe dive into why is COP27 important, we should probably take stock of some of the accomplishments that came out of COP26. I mean, from my vantage point, it certainly was the first time that business and financial services in particular showed up in force, right?
Yeah.
Which is important because, as you know, financial services plays a critical role in helping us with the transition to a more, sustainable society. And some of the commitments that came out of them were critical in the, over 130 trillion in assets under management for the firms that signed up for GFANs, as an example, is important to recognize. And I think that's where COP27 becomes even more important, is because we need to understand and see what, real progress has been made towards at least understanding where those firms stand as far as their exposures are concerned, and how they're looking at financing that transition with some of the intermediate goals for 2030, and ultimately, obviously, for 2050.
Oh, and I think we've probably seen a lot of activity, right, amongst the financial services sector. I think particularly on the net zero commitment, and the ones that also committed to power past coal. And from my perspective, I'd say we're seeing firms for sure putting a lot of effort into their baselining, the transition pathways mapping, and really trying to understand, okay, well, what does their business look like as it goes through kind of the next 20, 30, 40 years?
Yes, I mean, certainly over the last, several months, even since the beginning of this calendar year, many financial institutions have, as you said, calculated their baseline emissions, and set their targets, and put it out publicly in their TCFD reports. Um, but the one thing that I think we need to push, and that's why COP27 is important, and we can't wait more years, is that they've only been for a couple sectors, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot more coverage, I think, that needs to be made. And the one thing I wanted to ask you about and get your thoughts is that, the location of COP27 is
Mm-hmm.
probably pretty important too. What do you see as the importance of the location and the message for COP27?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Brandon. Set in Africa, I think it gives the potential platform to really profile the fact that different countries will have different routes to net zero. Will highlight, hopefully, has the opportunity to highlight the different needs of emerging market countries, of African countries, not just in terms of financing, but blended finance, maybe finance platforms that need to get set up. It's kind of routing the finance through to the projects, as well as, of course, as we discussed earlier, you know, actually having a real world impact and a positive impact. So thinking about mitigation, thinking about adjustment, thinking about a just transition. So in my mind, I'm hoping that the fact that it's located in Africa, in Egypt, will give a platform and more profile to the plight of different nations, and actually the needs that they have in order to do this in a just way and in a successful way.
The other thing that I've seen, and it's going to be important for COP27, is there's a lot more regulatory activity as far as guidance,
Yeah.
expectations around the globe, right? And it seems like things are coming out. I mean, over the last 3 weeks, I mean, we saw in the U.S. the SEC proposed rule. Then we saw the ISSB, and most recently some guidance from Europe on disclosures and reporting. Do you think that that's going to continue?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two really important things there, Brandon. I think first of all, we definitely observe where there's the regulation, then that kind of creates activity in that direction. Let's take disclosure and reporting as an example. It's such a huge and complex area when you're looking at non-financial reporting, when you're talking about sustainability reporting and disclosures, that firms don't want to create a whole way of doing it, let's say voluntarily, and then have to rip it all up and adopt an entirely different approach because the regulations that come out don't kind of tie up. So I think there is a willingness, and of course we've seen a willingness for voluntary commitments, but I think the regulation really helps because it is such a huge and complex topic. I think it just helps to pull everybody in the right direction. I mean, you must have seen that with the kind of announcements from the SEC, etc., back in March, right?
Yeah, I mean the conversations, the attention that financial services now has because of that is just accelerated, and the reporting is the actual publishing and the reporting of the information is just one sort of piece of it. There is so much work that needs to be done to have something to report,
Yes,
right? At
exactly.
the end of the day, like the good news is that um, the timing of all of this is, I think, appropriate as far as being able to do all of that work before the requirements actually take effect. But the work really does start now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then I think the final point I would add is, FS really do want more policy across the different sectors. To your point, we've seen a lot of focus on oil and gas, energy, but as countries evolve their policy across whether it be farming, transportation, housing and construction, etc., that's also really helpful for FS in terms of then determining how they're going to help to finance the transition. So it'd be great to see more country level commitments around policy as well, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I really am looking forward to seeing what progress we've made, and how much more commitment we are going to make at COP27 to accelerate things even faster.